रुक मैं बैनर निकालता हूँ फिर भी कर दे चालू बैनर निकाला कर चालू
In a universe shrouded in mystery, where the stars are our only companions, a journey awaits that will push the boundaries of knowledge. Prepare yourself for something that will redefine our understanding of technology, unveil the secrets of the cosmos, and witness the marriage of human ingenuity and artificial intelligence. We bring you the flagship event of IEEE SIS-GST, the Galaxy of Intelligence, Epsilon. A triad of scholarly symposium days guided by the wisdom of global pioneers and visionary minds. An event designed for everyone to gain knowledge and cultivate interest and curiosity. In this edition, we give you Narrow AI. Narrow AI is the concept of brainstorming events that have a significant impact on AI technology, with humans like us, you, and me. We're not different, we are the same, with faraway souls. The concept of AI extends from the tip of your hair to the last cell of your nail. Computer vision. Computer vision excels in a field where robots outperform human vision. We will construct a future, the light of invention, together. Self-traveling dreams during the day and night. Algorithms flare in this world of pixels, revealing faces and emotions in the darkest night. With each step forward, we go closer to the future, the promise of computer vision and an unending flight. Deep space communication. MTT-S ascends, passing across galaxies in its path. Deep space learning is a place where mysteries wait. As boundaries disintegrate, the cosmos is revealed. The brilliance of AI and technology, the resolution of a cosmos. We gather at Epsilon, raise eager and bright, in the light of AI to comprehend the cosmos. Prepare for an intellectual adventure like no other. Mark your calendars because the future awaits. Epsilon 2023 starts 30th September, live on YouTube. Brought to you by IEEE SIS-GST.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Epsilon 2023. I'm Amir Kulkarni, MDO at IEEE SIS GST.
Intelligence.
We hope that the previous computer vision seminar opened your eyes to a variety of fresh information. We believe that this session on deep space communication will provide you with a wealth of information and introduce you to a variety of concepts. The first talk session, titled About the Space, is now taking place under the MTT-S section.
So just a little background information for the attendees before we start. The tasks and quizzes we have planned for each day of our symposium will test the attendees' familiarity with the subjects covered in each session. Players will be evaluated based on their actions in order to complete on the leaderboard, and each action is worth a specific number of points. Each participant will receive a certificate, and the top scorer will receive awesome prizes. Now, let's welcome our first guest speaker for the day and start our most anticipated session.
Mr. Chaitanya Mandala, an engineer with a background in astrodynamics and ground station operations, received his engineering education at Sapienza University of Rome. He is now working on ground station software for Pleaidis Lab in order to support the next CubeSat missions. Mr. Chaitanya has been a teacher for 5 years and is passionate about passing on his technical knowledge to the next generation of engineers.
Welcome, sir. We are thrilled to have you here today, and we are looking forward to this really incredible session. Hello, sir.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here on a Saturday afternoon. Glad to see there's interest in learning about deep space, and with the recent missions of Chandrayaan done by ISRO, I think it's well overdue that we learn a lot more about aerospace communication and try to improve our knowledge on how how ISRO does its mission, how every other space agency is able to do the missions, these adventurous missions that they are able to do. So today my goal is to present a little bit information about background of ground stations. So when any space mission happens, we hear a lot about what the mission was, how the satellite has went to either moon or Mars or land, or if there's a lander and a rover, like it happened in the recent mission in Chandrayaan-3. But to support all that information, to support those missions, to receive those amazing photos that you might have seen on different social platforms in the recent days, there's a background called ground stations. So these are huge structures of antennas that are able to receive and transmit information from from the satellite and to command the satellites to take those pictures. So today I want to show you a little bit about how these ground stations work, what are the differences between operating antennas on for terrestrial applications, and what are the differences when you use them for deep space communications, right? So obviously the main difference is the distance. So is the distance between, for example, Earth and Mars. It's a huge distance. So how do we we'll cover how do these ground stations have these technologies that could help help make that connection between a satellite that's operating around Mars. So let's get right into it.
Okay, so this session will run for 90 minutes before the quiz. So let's get started. Within the last 30 minutes of the event, we will post a link to the quiz in the YouTube live chat.
Okay, so without further ado, we would like Mr. Chaitanya Mandala to introduce deep space communication to the audience. You may start.
Can you confirm if you can see the screen? All right, so ground stations and deep space communications. Is everything okay? All right, so I designed just a little bit to add to what Amiya already has said is I build software for CubeSat. So my duty on day-to-day basis is to design software that could help the satellites send information to the engineers that are operating the CubeSats. So that would include different variables like temperature. What's the temperature like in the environment that the CubeSat is in? If there is an atmosphere inside the CubeSat, what the pressure is like, what's the memory status, electricity, or the current and voltage values for different sensors. And so the engineers who are operating those CubeSats should be able to see everything on a single screen. And so I designed software to do that, to make that happen. And one of my other passion is to teach physics to young kids. That always has been when I was in India studying in Dhanbad, Jharkhand, and it continued when I came to Rome like half a decade ago. And when I'm not doing this, like my favorite things is to read a bunch of books. So I think you can see a little bit around in the background as well. So let's get right into it. The deep space missions, the flagship research missions that ISRO does are
Hello, sir.
Chandrayaan-3.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Can you share your screen in a full screen mode?
Okay. Share screen. Can you see the full screen now? No.
No, sir.
Right.
You can use slideshow.
How about now? Slides I have to upload now, right? Okay. Is that okay? Or is that okay, or is it still have?
Yes, it's okay now.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Let's continue. The flagship missions of ISRO are Chandrayaan-3 and Mangalyaan, which are, as we said earlier, the main difference in operating deep space missions is that they're very far away. So 62.7 million kilometers, or the moon, which is slightly even farther away, but slightly better than Mangalyaan. So to do this, we have 32-meter antennas that the ISRO owns, but ISRO uses, especially for the recent years, a cooperation between NASA's Deep Space Network, which has even more higher capable antennas, and European Space Agency's antennas, along with a few other Pleaidis antennas, just so that the mission is successful. The stakes for Chandrayaan-3 mission were very high when compared, especially given that the Chandrayaan-2 mission was almost there but failed in the last second. So it was the stakes that the stakes for Chandrayaan-3 mission to be successful were very high. So ISRO didn't take any chances, or either on ground stations or on the safety mechanisms that are implemented on the onboard spacecraft. So they were using at least 4 different antennas to track during the different stages of the missions. And that made sure that at every time the spacecraft at any time did not lose connection to the engineering team back in Bangalore. So the major bands that were being used is SNX bands. So the ground stations connect space to the Earth. So we can send all the missions. We can send as many satellites as possible. But if we cannot connect the satellite to our Earth and receive that information, we consider that as failure. The failure point of a space mission is losing access to the satellite or losing communication to the satellite. So if we consider the different segments that make up the space and Earth connection, you can see in the right image that the space segment is the satellite. Now it sends the payload data. So if it takes pictures, it sends payload data to the antenna, which is sent to the data processing center, which is generally close to the antenna, or it could be connected using fiber networks, which is then converted into some value-added products, which could be like weather predictions, and that would be sent to your mobile phone. So to see the prediction that you see, okay, it's going to be hot or it's going to rain. All of this is happening simultaneously using different Earth observation satellites that India has or other agencies have. The other part to it is that the ground segment will send information or send commands to the spacecraft to, for example, they want to, especially this happens during the war phase, like in phases of war, where they want to take photos of specific cities or specific areas. The satellites would be commanded to turn to specific latitude and longitude and take detailed images. And then the third part is called tracking, especially in the deep space missions, which is to know in which part of the solar system the spacecraft currently is. So the recent Aditya mission, which is a mission to the sun, is generally after the rocket launch. Generally, it stays for 2 or 3 days in the low Earth orbit, so close to Earth, so that the engineers can make sure that the launch has not damaged any of the sensors, any of the propulsion modules, any of the basically electronics that are useful during the mission. Once the engineers are sure that everything is well and good, then the spacecraft enters a deep space orbit. So using a small propulsion, they put it in an orbit that will take that close to the final destination of that spacecraft. So during all of these phases, we need to know exactly where the satellite is, so that we can point the antenna and send commands to the spacecraft. So we never lose the position and velocity of the spacecraft. We never lose contact with the spacecraft as well. So that's the tracking part of the ground station duties, and the telemetry part is referring to the different states of the different parts of the spacecraft that tell us about how healthy the spacecraft is. Is it functioning nominally? Is the temperature too much? Then we might turn the AC on, let's say. So increase the power to cooling segment so that the temperature could be then reduced. So different things like this. So we continuously observe the health of the spacecraft and send commands to the spacecraft so that it can operate nominally. And that's the job of engineers at the ground stations. All right, so we already said that we have to transmit the commands. Those include the operation of cameras, operation of sensors, and also to use the propulsion module, which is basically sending from one orbit to the next orbit and receive the payload data. Depending on what kind of mission it is, for example, the Chandrayaan sent us like different kinds of elements there are on the surface of Moon. So now that depends on the sensor data, and the rover which had made that experiment concluded that it sends the data back to the lander because the rover doesn't have a powerful antenna to connect directly to the Earth. So the rover is a small, the small rover uses its antenna and to send their information to lander, which then sends it back to both the Chandrayaan orbiter and the ground station antennas. So it needs that the antenna to transmit between Earth and Moon. It needs a minimum amount of power that is present on the lander, which makes it possible for it to transmit back to Earth. So let's take a little bit a rough overview of what the operations center looks like. So we said there is a ground station team. But there are obviously other teams that are involved in a spacecraft mission. For example, the videos that you see during the Chandrayaan missions, they are from the Mission Operations Center. So there, the head of ISRO is there. the head of engineering teams, all the heads are in the Mission Operations Center to make sure that if anything goes wrong, all the teams can make a decision and make sure and respond quickly to that problem. So that's where all the critical decisions of mission happen. And those are relayed to the engineering team that may be in the same building or in another city, trying to control the engineering aspects of the spacecraft. And then there is the Science Operations Center, which receives the information about elements, for example, and then processes that information and makes sure every day, like the received data is accurate repeatedly before it's released to the general public. This is generally how the flow of information and the command structure is laid out in ISRO, but it's common to many other government space agencies. So the engineering team is at the core, which I imagine a lot of you are could be interesting to you if you take up the role of enter the aerospace engineering domain. So they are continuously in conversation with the Mission Operations Center, who are observing all the different information that is relayed from the spacecraft. And the science operation team is continuously contacting both to receive the information from the spacecraft, but also tell the engineering team to perform certain new maneuvers so that they can get better data. So, for example, the engineers might not know what kind of data, which orientation that Aditya might look at would get the best data from the sun. So the science team has the solar, like engineers or research scientists that work on aerospace. They work on solar environment, how the different layers of sun work. So they convey the information on how to orient the spacecraft to the engineering team, and they would then convey that as a command to the spacecraft. So that's how the structure is laid out. Yes, and so this is exactly the same picture from before, just a little bit more more visible. One thing that's crucial for all of this is the ground station, like data storage and network. So as we said, all these teams need not be in a single city, but they need information. They need access to information immediately, within a fraction of seconds. They need to know exactly what is going on with the satellite so that they can respond as quickly as possible. So every station or every center is connected to a data storage that immediately translates or transfers that data to other centers. So these are generally huge data centers that are well connected to every other center. All right, so let's get a little bit into detail on what a typical ground station contains. You don't need to know like this, like ignore that part. What I wanted to show you is these part, the first column, just the first column, so which contains antenna, tracking antenna. So the antenna has to track the satellite that's going in the sky. So there are different tracking algorithms that maintain the accuracy. Antenna feed, software-defined radio. More and more systems in ground stations have started to use software-defined radio, opposed to hardware solutions that were traditionally used because of how customizable they have become, customizable and affordable they have become. A modem is something that translates the received information into something that we can understand. It has different encodings, encryptions that can be played with, but it's a crucial part of a ground station. And a ground station dongle is built by Gauss, a company in Italy, but essentially it simplifies all the systems and and puts it in a simple dongle that simplifies that is available or easy to use. So let's see one video. As we said, yes. So on the moon right now, the communication is still a little bit difficult, or it's not as available as it is on Earth, where we can use internet all the time. So ESA and NASA have proposed a communication constellation, which is a set of satellites around Moon that will give access to the internet to surface on Moon. This is very crucial if we have to send astronauts to live on the Moon, as we are planning now. So if we go back to Moon this time, we are going there back to stay, and people need internet. So such a constellation will give access to the internet around the clock, and also they would be able to see videos or stream Netflix at very high quality because of the constellations like this. All right, so typical frequency bands for space communication. Well, these are all the bands that are generally used, but we generally use, as aerospace engineers, S, X, and Ka. So S band, as you already know, has a bigger wavelength, but it gives low data rate when compared to the other two. So S band is used for emergency recoveries. So, for example, even with all the planning, we lost access to a satellite, which happens sometimes because we don't know, we cannot control any of them. We cannot control if certain electronics, if a certain electronic component on the satellite has gone wrong. So, for example, there's an underlying electronics and mechatronic interface that controls the attitude in the spacecraft. So, if that particular component is malfunctioning, so the antenna is not pointing towards Earth anymore. So we cannot exactly point or use a Ka band frequency, because the Ka band is a very narrow pointing band. So you need high accuracy in how the antennas are aligned to use Ka band. While S band, even if the alignment is a little off, so even if it's 10 degrees apart, because it's a wide band frequency, it's high wavelength frequency, you can use it for recoveries. While Ka band is good for high data rates, and which is the band. So Ka is the preferred frequency band that we use for a constellation around Moon. So it has other advantages like low interference with atmosphere or ionosphere. So we have to take care of we have to take care of the environment that the signal passes through, to avoid any interferences between the atmosphere, ionosphere, and these signals. So there's a new trend, which is the optical communications or laser communications, which is basically using laser communications, which we'll see a little bit more in a second. So the high data rate, as we said, is possible with high frequency bands, but that comes with more stringent pointing requirements. So we need to exactly track the satellite within few milliradians or micro. So for optical communications, it's few microradians. So if you have ever played with a laser, you know how thin the pointing could be. So even if it's like a 500 meter apart, the laser doesn't diverge as much. So you need that satellite few hundreds of thousands of kilometers away to receive this receive the laser within the same diameter, or more or less the same diameter as the origin of the laser pointer. So this is the challenge with optical communication, which is the atmosphere interferes with with light, and it causes the laser to diverge. So how do you, the engineering challenge that's being currently examined is how do you make that accurate enough, even to make ground to space optical communication possible. But intersatellite links are being currently used a lot by SpaceX. These are much higher in speed, like tens of times higher than the radio frequency. But SpaceX constellation, the latest version of the SpaceX satellites, are all equipped with optical communications. So there are two different types of communication. If you take the example of the Chandrayaan lander rover combination, the lander is able to communicate directly with Earth ground station. So that would be direct to Earth, while the rover cannot communicate directly because of smaller antenna, lower power availability, and like many other reasons. So it uses the lander as a relay of the information that it's collected. And if the lander deems necessary, it can also use the orbiter as a relay to reach the ground station. So space relays have been very much common since the 90s. NASA has a relay constellation set up for its deep space missions and other missions. It's other missions that makes it, when it makes sense, they use these relays. And they're generally around a 42,000 kilometer orbit called a geostationary orbit. All right, so optical laser communications, basically it's using lasers to communicate. They have tens of times higher data rate, and because the lasers are very thin, they're not susceptible to hacking, or the unwanted party cannot hear them, like a radio or S-band could be, like it happens with radio frequency. So even just considering the security advantages, this is becoming a very interested technology to research and develop, both by public parties like NASA, JPL, ESA, but also the private partners like private companies like CubeSat. We'll see a little bit about CubeSat in the upcoming slides. So at a very high level, what's important about a ground station is the location it is in. So the location determines how long a satellite is able to be in contact with the ground station, with that particular antenna. To give a very basic idea, so if there is a satellite around North Pole, so it's going from North Pole to South Pole, and you have a antenna at the equator, it's going to be in contact for very less time. Instead, if you have a satellite going around the equator and you have a ground station at the equator, you have much higher contact time. So this is a rough idea on why a location is important. So antenna power, gain, and temperature are all very important. And so more powerful antennas generally have bigger dishes. So the biggest ones are owned by NASA, 70-meter dishes. And they obviously require a lot more power, both to transmit and maintain, but also a lot of power to rotate the antenna. So this antenna would track the satellite. So the entire dish would continually move upwards or sideward or in the same plane to be able to track the antennas in the sky. Gain over temperature is very important. So gain over temperature in a rough way, in a very rough sense, is how much it is able to amplify the received or transmitted signal without taking too much noise. So if the temperature around the antenna is too high, or there is too much wind, or there is rain, there's going to be a lot of noise that we don't want. That's the reason why the locations that are generally selected for the antennas are very dry, and the climate doesn't change as much. So there's a whole set of instructions, manuals to properly select and build an antenna for deep space communications. Supported protocols. There are very different types of protocols that are used in antennas. Very famous one that you might know is DVB-S2, which is used in TV communications. As standard is used for deep space communications, that is very there's a standard that is used for deep space communications that all the space agencies generally adhere to. Availability is so even ISRO has like multiple missions that it needs to support. So if there's only one antenna, that antenna has to support many different missions. So they have to schedule all these different missions for the antenna to track, which not only depends on the free time of the antenna, but also the visible, like when the satellite is visible. So if the demand is too much, the agency might decide to buy services from other agencies or build a new antenna, depending on how the finances would work. I have a website where you can read a little bit more about the important parameters of the ground station segments. It's basically my name, so you'll be able to find the website easily. The link budget is a very important concept in space communications, or generally satellite, like telecommunications. And in space communications, the difference is the losses due to the distance are incredibly high. So, for example, if we go to Moon, yeah, it's a bit far and you have a little bit of losses. If you go to Mars, then it's a little more. But if you go to Neptune or Pluto, like one of the missions of NASA called New Horizons, you basically receive 1 dB of signal. So you need an incredibly powerful antenna to receive that signal and amplify it without increasing the noise, so that the information in that signal could make sense. So, which makes my like the aim of this the third sentence is just to give like a rough idea on what this. So it depends on the receiver gain as well, to be able to amplify that 1 dB signal received from Pluto. NASA uses a 70-meter antenna, 70-meter colossal antenna, and with appropriate software accompanied by a software that could make sense of all the information that's received. And we've said that satellite tracking is another duty that's given by that is taken up by the ground stations. So how do exactly ground stations tell? How do people on Earth tell where a satellite is in the space, right? Because you cannot directly obviously see it; it's too far away and too dark even to see it, even using a telescope, using the most powerful telescopes on Earth. So there are a lot more ways than what I've said here, but the simplest way is a Doppler, which is basically sending a signal, a radio frequency signal from the satellite to the ground station, and measuring the time taken for that signal to travel. So this is, so you just multiply the speed of light with the time taken for the signal to be transmitted or received, transmitted and received, and you have the light, you have the distance essentially. To make it more accurate, you use a two-way Doppler, which is you send a signal to the satellite, and then the satellite sends the signal back to the ground stations. And you divide that time by 2 and then multiply it with the speed of light. So that is a very rough way. There's a lot more math involved in using Dopplers for distance measurement. But a rough way, the higher the frequency that you use, the more accurate you get the distance and velocity. All right, so yeah, every good tracking ground station has an atomic clock in its basement. And that's because we said we multiply the speed of light with the time. So if there is an error in measurement of time of 1 second, that means the satellite may be off by 300,000 kilometers. And that's too huge. And we generally use atomic clocks that are precise with nanoseconds, so that our accuracy of the position, we know the position of the satellite by few meters. So at any point of the satellite mission, it doesn't matter if it's close to Mercury, close to Pluto. It doesn't matter how many millions of kilometers it is. We generally know the accuracy of a satellite to few meters. So, and obviously the frequency standard of the signal of S-band and X-band are set by the atomic clocks. Okay. So these links are refer to websites where you can see what the NASA, which satellite currently the NASA's Deep Space Network is talking to. I'll probably give an edited version of this slide to the organizers, and they can make it available online. So the problem with deep space communication. So a little bit background for this. It's basically a NASA ground station that is trying to contact Voyager mission that is beyond the solar system. So you see Pluto, the spacecraft is beyond Pluto, which is the last body of the solar system. So such a satellite that's being contacted from Earth cannot be in contact continuously. So you see now, when the yellow light is line is disappeared, that implies that it's not the satellite is no longer visible from that ground station, and this is the problem of deep space communications, because any point on Earth is not directly aligned to the satellite all the time. So the solution to that is to have 3 ground stations that are 120 degrees apart, so that even if one ground station has just lost the contact with the next with the satellite, the next ground station can immediately pick it up. So ISRO's ground stations. Okay, this is not the image of ISRO ground station, but ISRO has 2 ground stations in Karnataka, 18 meters and 32 meter antennas. And the modulation scheme, as I said earlier, follows an international standard called CCSDS standard, which makes the data received decoding the data received compatible with the international standard. So anyone can receive that data, and with the right information of encryption done by the main agency, the other agencies can decode that information and send it back to the main agency. So gain over temperature is an important parameter of antenna, of course. 3 locations apart. So there's one in Spain, one in Australia, the other one is in US. These are the 70-meter antennas and 34-meter antennas that are used for deep space missions, but still not as far as like New Horizons, like Pluto is concerned, or not missions to Pluto, but deep space like missions to Mars. So it is compatible with S, X, and Ka. And yeah, they use a very robust signal processing algorithms to extract signals from even lowest SNR signals. The mission that I showed you earlier, which is Voyager, only a 70-meter NASA dish can decode the information, or still can receive the information from Voyager mission that was sent about 60 years ago. It was sent in the 70s or 80s. So those are 2 missions that are currently outside our solar system. Those are the only 2 man-made objects that are outside our solar system. All right, so yeah. So NASA has a lot more antennas that are spread throughout the universe. It's spread throughout Earth that make sure that all their satellites receive more than 99% of availability time to the ground. So they're always in touch with their satellites. And there are different phases of a satellite mission, which is launch and going to the first orbit. And then cruise refers to going to the first orbit, on the way to the final orbit. It's very much like, let's say, if you take an aeroplane, this would be takeoff, cruise would be on the way, orbital would be reaching the final destination, and in situ is referring to the missions that happen on the ground. And the mission trajectories, so they can be any different kind of orbits. NASA will be able to obviously support them. And we, in the sense that ISRO would hire NASA services to track their satellites. ISRO also has an impressive set of ground stations around the world. They have a 35-meter antenna in Spain, US, and Australia. But they have a list of smaller antennas that they use for supporting near Earth orbits. So Japan is very ambitious in their missions too, and they have 3 antennas that are supporting. There are 3 antennas in Japan that are supporting these missions. One of the biggest of them is a 54-meter antenna. So working together, so much like or similar to United Nations, there is an agency called ITU, International Telecommunications Union, that allots these frequencies that you might already know of, to avoid any interference between the same band operations between either different countries or in the same country but different agencies. So they standardize protocols like this in coordination with both agencies and companies. And yeah, generally these are connected and with few terabytes of data. So let's see a little bit about first this one. So a rover, like I replaced it with a 3D model of the car essentially, but is generally in contact with the orbiter that's going around Moon. And that Moon or that satellite or that orbiter that's going around the Moon will be in constant contact with Earth. And this is how we keep or we continuously maintain contact with any mission that's run by ISRO. Right. Well, there are also a few private ground station companies that basically have this infrastructure that we talked about, and they give or they let they rent out their capable infrastructure to other companies, other private companies. So until 2010, the whole space industry has been dominated by public agencies like NASA, European Space Agency, ISRO. But with the advent of new private companies, the need for supporting those private companies by private players has also been increased. So different companies are trying to find feasible business plans that could support other companies. And this is one of the industry where basically they are renting out their antennas to other industries, to other companies and or government agencies. All right, so LeafSpace is Italian-based companies. Viasat is a US-based company that has been present for a long time. They also build their antennas and provide extremely powerful antennas. But they also have satellites, which it can also rent out for as relays to other missions. Swedish Space Agency is as well as the space industry itself, which is supporting many national missions. So it supports TV providers, like, for example, Reliance could hire them, but also it provides support for Indian government for either Earth observation or like surveillance missions. KSAT Light is another company from Norway, and they have huge infrastructure that's spread out as big as agencies like NASA and European Space Agency. And they support both huge missions and small missions. So this is one of the this is the only company based in UK that's based in UK. This is the only private company that supported the Chandrayaan 3 mission. So what makes it so special? It's because it operates at minus 265 degrees, very close to zero, absolute zero, reducing the noise considerably. And it follows the standard, the global standard CCSDS architecture that enables cooperation with other agencies. And it's also used for radio experiments. So it's so precise that it's also used for radio experiments. So it has a huge track record of supporting Mars Express, many other missions since then. And LeafSpace is a new coming ground station company that's trying to make its place in this particular service. All right, so this is a different kind of different way, but of the same thing. So it's in contact with the orbiter and the ground station that's being that can send the information back to Earth. Making the point that setting up communications which are as reliable as Earth is is very crucial for setting up a human habitat on Moon. So before we have aims, we should be able to, before we aim for human habitats, we should be able to set up a powerful ground station there. So how do we select a new ground station? It's basically need to have a stable weather. Should be politically stable. If you consider all the different countries that it could have, it's financially makes sense for companies or agencies to prefer companies that have relative political stability. And geographical location, as I said, it's very important. But the other factor is elevation. So an antenna that's situated in high places, like in Ladakh, for example, has a better chance of basically it receives better signal than one in Hyderabad, for example. Yeah, we need technical staff, low interference, and legally it should. Okay, setting up communication links and communication setups has a significant legal part to it. So in the terms of licensing those frequencies, licensing ground stations, licensing satellites. So it takes a significant amount of time and efforts for companies that deal with this. Connectivity with local network. So that's fiber optic connectivity with the rest of the agencies. How accessibilities? Well, this is a little less important because this is a little less important than the other factors, but it's nice to be accessible. And operational costs. So we need to obviously, after selecting a particular place, take all the equipment there, build a structure there, hire labor, and so there are very significant capital expenses that go into building a particular ground station. So that obviously plays into everything. And for those of interested in ground station operations, so a degree in telecommunication or aerospace engineering with satellite communication systems is crucial. And it would be better if you already have experience handling antennas, have experience on how to receive, transmit, either with simple services like simple hardware like RTL, STR, have experience coding with them, playing with them. So that plays a lot of huge role when companies are looking for for hiring people. Understand different satellite communication protocols, both which are commercially used, but also that are standard for deep space communications. And you need to know how to predict when a satellite would be visible from the place where the ground station is, and be able to schedule and coordinate with other providers in that to make sure that the ground station is being used in the most efficient way as possible. All right. A little earlier than 1 hour, but yeah. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, we can do the questions now.
What a wonderful meeting that was. In today's world where communication and technology plays a vital role in advancing our understanding, your session was not only informative but also a source of inspiration for all of us who attended. So it undoubtedly broadened our horizons and deepened our appreciation for the fascinating field of deep space communication.
Indeed, MA, that was a very interesting session. So moving ahead, we will now start a quick Q&A session. Therefore, if you have any questions or concerns regarding the topic, feel free to post them in the chat box.
Yeah. I see one question about Ankit Sharma. How might future missions to distant destinations rely on advanced communication systems? All right, that would be. So future missions, in the sense, let's say, let's push ISRO's what ISRO is doing now to more to bigger boundary. Like, for example, if ISRO is doing missions to Jupiter and Saturn. So because these are even farther out, what we need is our own infrastructure built that ISRO owns, that is able to communicate to that distances. So that would mean having bigger antennas. We saw like our infrastructure because is slightly just in India, while the other infrastructures, like while other companies have infrastructures distributed throughout the world. So having a distributed infrastructure would be very crucial. And what other things that become relevant is having highly accurate tracking systems that still have to be developed for like newer missions, newer and ambitious missions like that. I'm partly sure that was what the question was asking, but I'm not sure. Okay, but if there's any other part, you can ask Ankit Sharma. All right. The next question: do you know some organizations in India that are working towards establishing a strong infrastructure for deep space communications? No. The major private companies from India are or the major sectors that Indian private companies are working in is rocketry and it's Earth observation, and I see a little bit of space education, but these are the major two industries. So we still don't have any private company or organization that is working for to establish a strong tradition in deep space communication. I'd like to see that, though. I'd like to see that private companies have moved on to deep space communication as well, to support deep space communication. So what are deep space? What is a deep space network and its primary functions? It's a good question. So deep space network is a network of ground stations that are owned by a single agency or many different, a combination of agencies that support deep space missions. So to qualify for a deep space network, the antenna should be able to communicate with deep space network, and should be well connected with other antennas, should have excellent and accurate tracking systems, and work as a single system that is able to support a mission, support a satellite that is in the deep space boundary. Oh, you're welcome, Shruti. Shivam asks, do you believe can we break all communication cliches by achieving extremely huge range, such as do you believe can we break all communication cliches by achieving extremely huge range deep space comm, such as data transfer speed? I believe it's important to have more surgical approach rather than a completely connected solar system, because that would be just a waste of a lot of resources and power. It's because solar system is extremely empty, and unless we focus our efforts or deep space communication into in the exact range of the satellite, it would cost a lot of power and waste a lot of power. But we can extend our our communication capabilities by using relays. Like I showed earlier in the video, where we set up a communication constellation around Moon that would be in contact with the communication constellations and ground station setups on Earth. So a similar setup on Mars would be extremely useful for Mars-related missions. But one constraint that we have in deep space communications is that it's that it takes a lot of time to receive the signal from Mars. So even from Mars, it's greater than around 10 minutes. So to and fro would be around 20 minutes. Might have to check the value on that, but it's somewhere around that. So as we move to more distant locations, it takes a longer and longer time to set that up. A good example is Interstellar, where they receive information, in the movie where he receives all the information for after a few years. All right. Thank you, Professor Biju. Thank you for that comment. I'm happy to be here, and it's been fun to talk to the audience who are interested as well.
Okay, so that concludes the question and answer session. We sincerely thank you, sir.
Amir, there is one last question, I think.
Okay.
If we still have time, what are the key challenges in communicating with the spacecraft in deep space by Vidyut? Well, the key challenges is that we need a lot more power and accurately tracking the spacecraft. So we need to know exactly where the spacecraft is within few meters to make sure that we are able to get in touch with the spacecraft. Apart from that, there are a lot of losses, which is why we choose Ka band and not Ku band. That happen both in terms of when in contact with atmosphere, ionosphere, but we also lose some of it to the solar, the environment that is created by sun. So throughout the solar system. So there are these losses that we need to take into account. And one other main constraint that is very relevant is we have to be very careful on what we choose to send to space, because it's extremely expensive even now. So if we can have a very high, a huge antenna around Saturn that could communicate easily with Earth, but that would cost a lot of money and resources that the space agencies won't have. So it's a trade-off between what we can send to space in terms of finances, and the technology that we are able to send to the space. All right. Yeah, I think that's the end of Q&A session. Yes, please take over.
Yeah. Yes, so that's the end of Q&A session. And we would like to give you a small token of appreciation, sir. We really admire you. Certainly, our participants gained new and exciting knowledge regarding the topic of deep space communication. Once again, sir, thank you for your exceptional presentation. Your dedication to advancing our understanding of this critical field is truly commendable, and we look forward to any future opportunities to learn from your expertise.
Thank you for inviting me, and yeah, have a good day.
Thank you for, sorry, sir. Hello.
Yeah, Sanket?
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us, sir. And we got to know a lot about the deep space communication today. and we hope to hear you hear from you in the future also, sir. Thank you.
We would like to express our gratitude to our sponsors for their support, starting with HP, our technical sponsor. HP is an American multinational information technology company headquartered in California that develops personal computers, printers, and related supplies, as well as 3D printing solutions.
Also, our streaming partner is StreamYard. On the StreamYard platform, you may broadcast over social networks directly from your browser. Before choosing the premium plans to gain access to more features, it provides a free option that you may test out.
Finally, I want to express my gratitude to the audience for being so attentive. Good luck to everyone, and remember that tomorrow's hands-on session will make use of the abilities you gained today.
Thank you, everyone.
Guys, there's a Q&A, quiz link in the chat box. So kindly uh, fill the form.